are these people?
Shout out to Afeni, friend to the network. For those of you who know her, former um, podcaster for RBN. She's a member of Freedom Fighters in DC, which is an advocacy group. We both live in DC, so I see Afeni from time to time and do some actions with her. She DM'd me over the weekend to request my presence to attend this rally on Sunday for Poushawn Brown. We're going to get into Poushawn in a minute, but her sister Tina has been featured on Status Quo. JB has interviewed her as well. But Poushawn's story is very tragic in terms of, losing her life at the very beginnings of the pandemic, doing her job and then getting sick due to COVID. And she essentially died, in her sleep. So we'll go more into that in this stream. So I had the opportunity to go on Sunday. I met with Tita, as I said, her sister, talked to her briefly, and I asked her, how can we keep Poushawn's memory alive, and what can we do to help you? And she said, share my sister's story. So I have two big requests, maybe free tonight.
Okay.
Please share this stream. This isn't about views and clicks. This is about sharing a story that has otherwise been suppressed in mainstream media. And again, Jordan, Charlton, and JB have talked with Tina regarding Poushawn, but she died over 2 years ago. And there is some progress towards her seeking justice in terms of their interactions with Amazon, but there's still more work that needs to be done. So I just request all of you who are here we tweeted this out earlier. Please share it out on Twitter, every social media forum that there is. Please share out this tweet. Please share out the link so that more people can get to know Poushawn. The other thing that I'm going to request is, now that we're able to get super chats, any super chat that we get tonight will go towards Poushawn's GoFundMe. You can also find her GoFundMe link in the description below if you want to give any amount towards the family as they're dealing with court stuff. Poushawn had a daughter, that she left behind. So obviously, having to deal with family stuff. So whatever you're able to give, whether through Super Chat or
through the GoFundMe, which we have linked.
GoFundMe. Yeah. And shout out to Indy for linking it in the chat as well.
Yep.
Please do that. So yeah, as a result tonight, this will be a slightly shorter stream than normal, but I felt it was very poignant that we just focused on Poushawn tonight. So should we get started, Reef?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay.
I am down.
Okay. Wait a minute.
Yeah, you don't here. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll get this
all right
up for you.
So So actually, so what we're gonna see tonight, so like I said, I was able to videotape a good chunk of the rally. This took place outside of Jeff Bezos' house. Funny enough, I never knew. I've passed by his house. There's a section of DC called Kamarama, which obviously it's by basically where all the embassies are in DC. So
Right.
I've passed this building before, never knew that that was his house, but apparently it is. Just to give you an idea of where in DC, those of you who know the city, it is. So, so I was able to record, you know, free talks in regards to Poushawn. The first person who you see here is Dr. Maha Hilal, who I met briefly and spoke to briefly. She is the co-founder of Justice for Muslims Collective. She's also the coordinator for Not For Us Amazon, and she's also the founder and the executive director of the Muslim Counterpublics Lab.
Okay.
So she spoke in regards to Poushawn. And then also tonight, you're going to hear from Tina, Poushawn's sister, and then Chris Smalls, who also attended as well. So we're first going to hear from Mala and sharing her thoughts about Poushawn. So if you want to play the video.
Yep.
We were here in October last year to demand accountability for a woman named Poushawn Brown. If you haven't already heard of Poushawn Brown, now is the time for you to learn about her case. Poushawn Brown was a 38-year-old Black woman who was working at Amazon and who was being made to conduct COVID testing for her colleagues without any protective equipment or gear, without any safety measures, and despite regulations specifying that in order for someone to be conducting COVID testing, they had to have the appropriate experience, background, licensure, such as those in the medical profession. Poushawn did not have any or did not meet this criteria, but her pleas to stop COVID testing were ignored. On January 7th of 2021, Poushawn Brown went to sleep, and the following day, she never woke up. So we're here 2 years after Poushawn died to continue demanding accountability and justice for Poushawn Brown. When I was thinking about what I would say this somber afternoon, one of the things I looked to was quotes from Jeff Bezos. Because like any good propagandist, Jeff Bezos has said a lot. So Bezos said, for example, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. What do we have to say about Bezos' brand? What should we say about a brand that's responsible for workers' abuses, for workers' deaths, for workers' injuries, for all the injustices that come and are exploited by Jeff Bezos in order to continually make him the richest man in the world? I know there's some exceptions. Sometimes he drops to number 2. But nevertheless, we should be clear in building the narrative and continuing to build the narrative around the kind of company Amazon is. That when you see Amazon's logo on vans in your neighborhood, you don't associate that with fast delivery. You associate it with worker abuses, worker injuries, worker deaths. That's what we should know. That's what everyone in this country should know about Amazon. Here's another quote from Jeff Bezos about regret. He said, quote, "In most cases, our biggest regrets turn out to be acts of omission. It's paths not taken and they haunt us. We wonder what would have happened. I knew that when I was 80, I would never regret trying this thing, quitting a good job to start Amazon, and I was super excited about it. If I didn't try it, there would be a 0% of regret, and if I tried and failed, I wouldn't regret it." That's a useful metric for any important life decisions. Now keep in mind, Jeff Bezos never regrets the people that die in Amazon warehouses so he can gain a profit. This is not the kind of regret he's talking about. He's talking about regrets in terms of what could have made him more money. So we need to demand and continue to demand and fight for him to be hit so hard with Poushawn Brown's death that this becomes one of his greatest regrets, failing to show and actually give accountability to Poushawn's family. He needs to regret this. He needs to regret everything he's done, everyone he's harmed, to get him this mansion behind us. And we're here to make sure that he regrets Poushawn Brown's death and that Poushawn Brown's family gets justice, finally.
You there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
I mean, it was hard hearing this Sunday, and it's harder hearing it again.
Mm.
But this is capitalism, folks.
Yep.
You know, in terms of the result, this is why this country is in the state that it's in. And the fact that she was essentially exploited. She wasn't trained to give testing. And keep in mind, this was in the beginnings of the pandemic, pre-vaccine. And I'm sure, you know, I don't know Poushawn, I've never met her, but I'm sure she had the idea of like, as much as I didn't want to do this, this is my job.
Right.
So I didn't have a choice. But then this is a way to help my colleagues. So I'm sure, and that's what she was thinking. But that exploitation is what took her life.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the only reason they were doing testing was to continue work, pretty much.
Right.
So,
right. So
illegal
which,
testing.
yeah, and you know, and think about this. Like 2 years, almost 3 years ago, you know, like we would lock down, many of us. We couldn't go out. You know, we had curfews depending where you were. And really the only thing that you're able to do was purchase from Amazon. You know, so for those of you, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad, regarding that. But, we have a face of what was going on at that time in terms of having to work in the midst of that and not knowing at that time the full scope of what we know now. And even that, there's a lot more we need to know about COVID. But it was rampant, and people, like Amazon was one of the few places that you were able to get stuff relatively quick if you really needed it. But the costs of keeping going, ended up taking Poushawn's life, and not just her. And that's the thing that people need to understand. And we've kind of reported on this in our Substack back in September. There are more cases like this, more that probably have not been reported. But again, what makes Poushawn's story unique is that, it has entered in the independent media space, and Joanna and JB have been able to interview Tina. So there are some people who are aware of Poushawn's story and this tragedy, regarding what happened. But, but as I told you guys, I didn't know about Poushawn until this weekend, which I hate saying. But yeah, and Indy brings up a good point. While Jeff Bezos was going in space,
Yeah.
This woman passed away, basically helping him ensure that happened.
Well, unfortunately, she's one among many, on more than just COVID issues, if that's not your, like, particular bailiwick, like, there's been, I know me and Indy have both talked about it on How Do We Miss That, about people dying due to being there for storms and, due to no air conditioning, due to, countless reasons at this point.
Well, I think not even that, just having to travel God knows how long.
Yeah.
One way to get to a warehouse to work.
Yeah.
And not being able to take a break, having to pee in like basically a bottle to ensure that you're meeting your time.
Yeah.
Not being able to take the time off that you may want to.
Heat stroke. It's like, yeah, terrible.
Yeah. So it's just these conditions that I think need to be highlighted more in the public consciousness, in terms of, and I think people are aware of it somewhat, but this is why these stories need to be elevated, so people can know the dark and ugly truth as to what is happening at Amazon, what has been happening at Amazon, and what we can do, I think, especially in the independent media state, can help to force change. Or at least at minimum in our case.
At this event, would you say whole? Like
how many people? So yeah, there was probably about 20.
Okay.
About 20 people easily. There was one other group that did live stream this. And then, as I said, Chris Smalls was in attendance. Derek Palmer, who's the vice president of ALU, was in attendance. Afeni was there, with people from her advocacy group. And then, people who cared about Poushawn, who knew her, were there. But it was 20 people. I mean, that it should have been a lot more,
for sure,
honestly. And funny enough, again, I told you guys this was in an affluent part of DC. Someone called 911 on us, that the cops had to come. Yeah, and for me, that was very reminiscent of Force to Vote, because many of you know I helped to organize that event. I had to help get the permit. So legally, we had a right to be where we were, at least, but we weren't allowed to go within the perimeter of the Capitol at all. Like, we were only allowed to go around it in part. But even with that, because we're walking around, you know, not on the Capitol, but near where our permit was, we had license to be, the cops were wondering, like, what were we doing? To the point where some of us, if we weren't careful, were actually, you know, were going to be arrested. But also keep in mind, this was days before January 6th.
Right.
And they were able to go right into the Capitol Carte Blanche, which, funny enough, looking back at it now, because when I, as an aside, when I applied for the permit, the person who was offering me the permit basically asked me, are you up to anything, you know, funny stuff, basically? You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure that wasn't a question that they would ask normally, but people knew about January 6th and what was going on. Like, people knew in DC knew for weeks prior to. So it wasn't a surprise, but I felt she felt like we were connected with that. So, you know, so I was like, no. And, you know, and Mala actually said it, which I wish I recorded, but that she mentioned that the fact that the cops were called, like, someone called 911 on us. 20 people outside Jeff Bezos' house.
Yeah.
We were considered a threat. The working class is considered a threat. But the people in government, the people like Bezos, the elites, when they do stuff like this, they're not considered a threat. So it's just that dichotomy there of, you know, having, you know, people scared, or we infiltrated their idyllic neighborhood that, you know, that they were willing to call the police on us. Unfortunately, they didn't do anything. So that was good in this regard. But I could imagine if there were more people, like, what might have happened in that case. But yeah, as I said, this is capitalism for you, and the ugly sin that it is in regards to how it took Poushawnn's life.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You ready for the
yeah,
next
as
one?
I said, yeah, but before we do that, I just need, that's a little
Get that all out.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that all out. So yeah, so